What's good, Cubers? It's your boy Matt, and I'm back today with something really special. See, John over at Cultic Cube and I have been getting a lot of questions about silver bordered cards, so we've decided to collaborate. I'm gonna link his video below. Cultic Cube's gonna talk to you about playing silver bordered cards in your traditional powered and unpowered cubes, but me, I'm gonna talk to you about how to just build a straight up silver bordered card cube. Let's get started. So we really only have 3 sets to work with when building our silver bordered cube. We have unglued, unhinged, and unstabled. Wizards has only released 3 of these sets ever, so I actually think one of the benefits of building an UnCube is that you don't have to worry about updating it in a month or 2 months or 3 months, because Wizards spaces these sets out years and years apart, so you can build this cube, tweak it till you feel like you've got it right, and then you can leave it alone, which I don't know about y'all, I've got a few cubes, and having a cube that doesn't need regular updates is sometimes a relief. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of this thing. First, we need to talk about the method. Method 1 is that we could just play one of every card, but I don't like this method. Unglued, the first unset, is not really cohesive and was never meant for draft, and Unhinged has some Unfun Mechanics that we'll talk about later, and Archetypes are hard to come by. As a result, I don't like the solely singleton one card from every one of these sets method. I don't think it creates balance. Instead, I recommend basing your cube in unstable. It's the best set of the 3. The archetypes are the strongest there, and then you can play the best cards from Unhinged and Unglued without having to make your cube quite so janky. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to give up playing singletons of cards, sort of, talk about that in a second, but we're going to give up playing singletons of cards to increase consistency in our cube. And I haven't even told you the best part yet. If you build this cube from scratch, as in you don't own a single silver bordered card, you can build this cube for $165.69. That's how much my cube cost. And see, the thing is, I just had all these silver bordered cards laying around to begin with. I did have to go and buy a few that I didn't own, but I had drafted Unstable a lot and I just had the cards laying around the house, so the cube didn't even cost me this much. So this is a really great draft experience that can be had for basically a little more than the price of a nice booster box. So let's break down the stats of our UnCube. Our UnCube needs to support an 8-man pod. An 8-man pod needs 360 cards, so our cube should have 48 contraptions, because remember Unstable had 2 contraptions per pack, 47 cards per monocolor, 35 colorless cards, this does not include our contraptions, 10 multicolored cards, and 35 non-basic lands. That's going to create the ideal full pod of cards for a draft, and I recommend not going much larger than 360 because you really start to decrease the consistency of the cube, and this is not the kind of cube that you and your drafters draft every week, so it's not a big deal if they see the entire cube in one draft. Now, I brought up contraptions, so let's take a minute and talk about them really quick. This requires a little tweaking. Unstable packs had 15 cards in them, but 2 were contraption. And there's only 45 contraptions in the set, which supports 22 packs, and that's just not enough. You're going to actually need to pick 3 contraptions and play multiples of them. So if you play all 45 of the original contraptions that come with the set, you're going to have to add in 3 more to support a full pot of 8. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes getting a full pot of 8 together can be challenging and you end up with a smaller pot of 4, in which case sometimes we draft 5 packs of 9, and you can do this with the UnCube too. You just do 10 cards in a pack instead of 9, and you make the 10th card a contraption, and that really helps to increase the consistency as well. Now, playing contraptions does require a little more cleanup at the end of the draft. When your drafters are done, you'll have them separate out their basic lands and their contraptions so that you can have those in a separate stack. This will allow you to set up for your next draft just a little faster because the contraptions will already be sorted and you can deal them on top of the packs as you deal them out. But now that we've talked about contraptions, let's talk about running cards and multiples, because as I said, that's going to be mandatory. But when I say multiples, I don't necessarily mean the exact same card. Unstable brought us multiples that were a little different. Knight of the Kitchen Sink is a great example. The first Knight of the Kitchen Sink has protection from even collector numbers. The next Knight of the Kitchen Sink has protection from 2-word names, and the third Knight of the Kitchen Sink has protection from black borders. And I bring this up because you're going to want to pay attention to which multiples you run. See that third Knight of the Kitchen Sink? He's not relevant to an UnCube where every card has silver borders. He's just a 2/2 first striking vanilla. So I wouldn't play him in my UnCube, and I would play one of the other 5 different Knight of the Kitchen Sink variants. This is a way that you can run multiples, but they'll still feel a little bit like singletons. You can do the same thing with Very Cryptic Command and a few other cards in the set as well. But speaking of things you don't want to do, let's talk about some unfun mechanics maybe you don't want to play. Unhinged brought us the gotcha cards, where your opponent does something and you say gotcha, and then you return that card from your graveyard to your hand. My wife likes stop that because I tend to flick my cards. You'll actually notice it if you look in my unglued, unhinged, unstabled cube list that's linked down below that I do play this one gotcha card. It's because my wife likes to give me a hard time about it, but if I were you, I wouldn't play the gotcha mechanic from Unhinged. It's just inherently unfun. I probably wouldn't play Booster Tutor or things like it either. And it's just because they create feel-bad moments. They're a little unpowered or they're a little unfun. Booster Tutor, when you play it in the UnCube, most people just let you draw 15 cards out of the cube and pick one of those, which is really busted and not a lot of fun. And if you're playing with regular packs and cracking them open, like that's fine, but none of them are going to bring the wackiness and the funness of an UnCube, so I wouldn't play the Booster Tutor either. Still, there are a couple other things I wouldn't consider playing, like Blacker Lotus and Chaos Confetti. I have to admit that I loved these cards when they came out with the original Unglued, but you really need to ban cards like these for power reasons. Blacker Lotus is just really, really busted. It's a better Black Lotus. Just think about that. This card is better than Black Lotus because you get 4 mana instead of 3. Like, the card is bananas, and you don't want people ripping up your cards out of your cube anyway. And Chaos Confetti, just no. These cards are just too powerful. You need to ban them. And I will admit to openly playing Jack in the Mox. And I have to tell you, this card is really good. This card is regular, playing the Eternal powered cube good. It's a 6th Mox. And you might think about banning it for power as well. We've been okay with it so far, but it's a card I've definitely got my eye on. This card is really strong. So you're going to want to ban things that are either inherently unfun or overpowered out of your UnCube to help keep the environment balanced. Now let's take a minute and talk about guild cards in your cube. Guild cards in the UnCube are different from regular cube. So let's start with Ass Whooping. You get to destroy target silver bordered permanent in any game you can see from your seat. This card is a functional reprint of Vindicate, which is a cube staple that everyone plays, destroy target permanent. The sorcery speed, the mana cost is the same. This card is Vindicate. And Ass Whoopin' is a fine card to play in your Orzhov guild slot. Let's look at Old Buzzbark here. For X red and a green, when he enters the battlefield, roll X 6-sided dice onto the battlefield from a height of at least X inches. For each die, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the result on each creature you control that die is touching. For each die, Old Buzzbark deals damage equal to the result to each creature an opponent controls that die is touching. So normally in Cube, the guild cards are like guideposts and they hint drafters into what a guild is supposed to be doing. And Buzzbark implies that the red-green deck should be on some kind of dice matters thing, which is draftable in the UnCube, but I'm going to tell you right now that it's not super strong or really cohesive unless you pick up one card, and that card is As Luck Would Have It. And the more dice you roll, the more counters you put on it, and when you hit 100 luck counters, you win the game. And this is the kind of card that blends really well with Old Buzzbark, but otherwise Old Buzzbark is just a Gruul value card with a cool mechanic on him. Phoebe, Head of Sneak, is our Dimir card. She can't be blocked by creatures with flavor text, and then you can pay for and permanently steal another creature's text box. Phoebe is really good and really strong. but you'll notice that I'm missing some guilds here. Like, what's the great Ungolgari card? Well, the fact is, there isn't one. Wizards hasn't printed one. And as a result, some of our guild spots are lacking. I'm still playing 10 guild cards, but I don't have a card to play in every guild, which is going to create some small imbalance in the cube. It doesn't mean you can't play Golgari, it just means that there's no guild card to help make it a little more cohesive. So there are some weaknesses, and maybe Wizards will fix that in, 5 years when they print their next unset. Still, we do want to take a minute and pay special attention to Wooburg. Wooburg, 5 color cards. I play 2. And I'm going to tell you right now that Who, What, Where, When, and Why is a great card, even in a regular cube. This card is the epitome of flexible, and every drafter wants it. If you can just splash 1 mana symbol, then you turn on another mode on this card. And I've played a 2-color deck with just options, just splashing non-basic lands, so that I can play more options on Who, What, Where, When, and Why. This card is so good. The other Wooburg card I play, I have to admit, I'm just playing him for fun. He's not busted, he's not super strong, he's hard to cast, but players always just get such a great sense of achievement whenever they get to drop Urza the Academy Headmaster. His effects are random, you never know what you're gonna get. He's in the cube totally for funsies. If you wanted to pull him out and try and play a different card to balance out your multicolored section, because like I said, we play 10 multicolored cards, but some of the guilds don't have multicolored cards, so this is actually 2 of my 10. And the multicolored section is the section of my cube that I'm least happy with, but I can't do anything about it until Wizards can print me some more cards. So let's keep going and talk about how we play these multicolored cards, and that is we play mana fixing. We play tap lands, guild gates, life gain lands, tri-tap lands. You need these cards in your cube. I know that they're not uncards, I openly admit it, and yes, I do play City of Ass and a few of the other unlands, but you need some real mana fixing just so your players can play the colors that they want. So I recommend playing 10 guild gates, 10 of the life gain lands, and 10 of the tri-tap lands. These cards are so integral, you can't skimp on them, and I wouldn't go to fetches and shocks. The format is meant to be slower. This is meant to be kind of a retail draft kind of format, so playing original duels and shocks, aside from the fact that like 1 dual land is worth more than the whole cube, I think playing the tap lands is really fair and allows all the drafters to develop their boards, but not too quickly, but they can still splash colors. I think this for me has just been a nice balance. I plugged it in and it's just been beautiful. If you wanted to, you could sub out the life gain lands and play bounce lands instead. That's fine, but I would keep the mana base fixed but slow. I don't think you want to play fast mana in the UnCube. That's not the kind of format that it is. But talking about mana fixing doesn't just involve non-basic lands. We actually have to think about how much our basic lands matter, because there are a lot of cards in our cube that depend on artists and sets. For example, symbol status gives us a 1/1 expansion symbol creature token for every expansion symbol on the permanents that we control. If you're playing 1 set of basic lands from 1 set in Magic's history, then you're only going to add 1 symbol to the number of symbols that are in your cube. So you'll have Unglued, Unhinged, Unstable, and Kamigawa? Or whatever set you pick your lands from. And selfie preservation actually cares about the art on a card. So if there's a tree in its art, you put it on the battlefield tapped, otherwise the card goes into your hand. So now I have to think about like what the artwork looks like and what sets I'm playing. And I know that for a lot of you, your gut reaction is going to be to play these lands because they came with Unstable, and I just, like they're John Avon lands. They're gorgeous. The man is fantastic. But you'll notice there's no set symbols and there's no trees, which means that players can't fetch and play these lands and that they don't make symbol status any better. I actually encourage you to choose a bunch of different sets in Magic's history and play full sets of 5 from each of those sets. And by that, what I mean is you pick a plains, an island, a swamp, a mountain, and a forest from Ice Age that you like. And then you do the same thing for Mirage. and then you do the same thing for Urza Saga, and the same thing for Kamigawa, and on and on and on, and whatever sets you like, and whatever promotional Judge promo lands you like, but you just play one set of 5 from each. That makes Symbol Status a much better card, and it allows your players to play Selfie Preservation and then pay attention to what lands they want to add into their deck as they're searching through your land box. And let's be honest, there's nothing better than triggering another player when they look across the table and see that you've got white bordered 5th edition lands next to black bordered Guru lands. Like, come on, you know you want to see someone's face when you do that. So the basic lands we play in our cube do actually matter. And now it's time for us to talk about 3 cards in particular and whether or not we can play them in our cube. And I know this is a weird spot to talk about this in, but I feel like I have to address these 3 cards. And that's Johnny Combo Player and Timmy the Power Gamer. Johnny is actually pretty fair in UnCube as far as I can see, because to play him and activate him, they have to have 8 mana open on the first turn. Otherwise, he's just a 1/1 and he's not that hard to remove. Timmy the Power Gamer is also pretty fair because, again, to play him and trigger him, they need 8 mana, so most of the time he sits around for a turn or 2. The one you really gotta watch out for is Spike. I've been playing Spike in our UnCube for a little while, but after a recent experience, I think I might just have to pull her out. See, here's the deal. Spike allows you to go get any card that's ever been banned or restricted in a format, reveal it, and put it in your hand. So it kind of requires your friends to bring their own cards or to take cards out of your collection, and it punishes people who are new to Magic or relatively new to Magic because they don't have these banned restricted lists memorized. And if they don't have them memorized, then they certainly can't name a card and they have to pass on Spike. And so Spike always ends up in the veteran player's deck, the person who knows how to take advantage of Spike the most. After I sat down and drafted this with some relatively new Magic players who've only been playing seriously for a couple of years, I realized how much this just straight punishes people who are new to Magic. And so I do think Spike is probably going to hit the ban list in the near future. Alright, so we've talked about cards that should be in the cube, we've talked about cards that shouldn't be in the cube. Let's talk about archetypes. Archetypes are really important to traditional cubes. You need red burn, you need aggro, you need control decks, you need mid-range decks, but archetypes in the UnCube are a little different. Normally in the UnCube, players tend to draft the mechanic or the type of deck and less the archetype of aggro, mid-range, or control. And what I mean by that is there's a contraption deck to be had inside the UnCube, and it focuses on laying out lots of contraptions and a recurring value off of them as they crank them. There's a evasive deck inside of the cube in Dimir, which is the closest thing I can get to an archetype for any guild. There's a token deck inside the UnCube, and if you compare it with the Earl of Squirrel, Flock of Sheep is amazing. But it doesn't have to be a green-red token deck. It could be a green-X token deck. Just the other night, I played a Simic token deck, casting Crowstorm and Flock of Sheep, and then slamming the Earl of Squirrel and smiling at my opponent. Let me show you some more examples. There is the Dice Matters archetype that I mentioned earlier, but it really revolves around one card. There is a green-white augment deck in the cube that is fine. Black is the control color. Black X decks tend to be control decks because the black player has the most removal inside of the cube to support their deck. This is what I mean when I say the archetypes aren't as fixed as they normally are. They're more about building around a mechanic like augment or an idea like contraptions, or playing all the dice cards that you can play to help as luck would have it, and they're less the combo, control, ramp, etc. decks that we play in normal cube. Still, there's one more thing we really need to talk about, and it has nothing to do with archetypes, and it's the idea that this is an UnCube and it's supposed to be fun. Play some fun stuff. Not a lot of it, not so much that like the cube is janky and busted and everyone's just doing weird chaotic things, but I always enjoy playing Ashnod's Coupon and slotting it into a deck, and everyone loves making their buddy get up from the table and like, hey yo, go get me a Mountain Dew out of the refrigerator. Cards like Bingo, where you're just waiting around trying to cast that 6-drop so you can say bingo and turn him into a 9/9. Infernal Spawn of Evil is a card that makes drafters smile in every pack, and quite frankly, I have been It's Coming for 4 or 5 damage in a game before off of this little mouse. So UnCube, it's a fun format. It's not as serious as regular Cube. You want to keep balance in mind, but you want to remember most importantly that this set is about your drafters having fun. Well, that's going to do it for today, Cubers. Be sure to check out John and Cultic Cube's video on uncards in regular Cube. There are a bunch of them that are actually really playable. We've talked about some of them here. If you like this video, if you like what we're doing, please click the like and subscribe buttons down below. It means a whole lot to us. Give us a comment. Let us know what kind of video you're interested in. Catch us on the Twitter @CubeFor2. I'm on there. I'm always replying to anyone who tweets at me. So tweet me a question. I'll tweet you an answer. And as always, and until next time, shuffle up and keep uncubing, my friends.